Hey, stepmom. Today's episode is fit for a queen, a step queen, that is. You will love hearing from our guest all about how you can live happily ever after in your blended family life. I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, step-family life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this. Hello and welcome to the Stepmom Diaries. Today we have got the original step queen with us. Stepfamily counselor Brittany Lynch helps stepmoms around the world navigate and transform the relationships they have with their stepkids, their partner, and their partner's ex so that they can live happily ever after. Brittany is the founder and CEO of Stepqueen, the host of the top-ranked relationship podcast Queen of Your Castle, and a regular featured writer for Stepmom magazine. She helps other stepmoms from around the world to release jealousy, resentment, anger, and insecurity that come part and parcel with stepfamily life. With nearly a decade of experience as a registered nurse, a post-degree certification in stepfamily counseling from the Stepfamily Foundation, and many lessons from the School of Hard Knocks, Brittany has become a beacon of hope for countless stepmoms just like you who long for a life of peace, acceptance, and security. Brittany also happens to be one of our speakers at the Stepmom Summit, August 26th to 28th, coming up in a couple of weeks. You can get free tickets to this premier virtual event for stepmoms at thestepmomsummit.com. And we'll have links to the Stepmom Summit registration site and ways that you can connect with Brittany and all of her links at thiscustomlife.com/episode 28. So I have a lot of questions for Brittany, and I know that she is going to have a lot of information for us. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. Brittany, the step queen, is here. So glad you're here today.
Thanks for having me. Finally, we made it work.
Yes, absolutely. So we have got lots of fun stuff to talk about today, but I always like to start and hear a little bit about my guest's stepmom story. So tell me how you met your husband and how you became a stepmom and all the things.
Well, Reader's Digest version of that is that I'd been single for a while. I had a very, very strict rule that I would not date people with kids. It was my deal breaker. You can't do drugs and you can't have kids. That was it.
So Murphy's Law, of course.
Totally, except the drugs part, but at least 50% I found. But it was I was getting a little bit, I don't want to say older in life, but in dating years, I was dated older people. So it felt like this pool of people to date from was just shrinking because everybody had kids or did drugs. So I in a previous life, I was a registered nurse. That's where a lot of my background comes from, was from the nursing world. So I was working on a job and this new person was starting and everyone was talking about this new person starting. And I came around the corner one day to go into the kitchen to get a coffee. And there was this hot guy standing there. And my eyes just fell out of my head. And I looked at our admin assistant and I was like, who is that? So she started.
You're like, it's over. I don't care if he's got kids.
It was over. It was I was obsessed. I was taking sneaky pictures of him and sending them to my friends, being like, I'm going to marry this guy. And anyway, long story short, turned out, yes, of course, he had a kid, but I just didn't care at that point. And the rest is really history. Men at work.
I love it. That's great. Yep. Love it
at first sight. Love it, obsession. It was probably borderline creepy in retrospect.
Well, and of course, all of us, we fall in love and, decide to settle down, get married, whatever, and, have this vision of what things are going to be like, even with kids. And of course, it all, turns into something totally different than what we expected. So I love the story on your website about how you, were miserable as a stepmom and you sort of turned that around into, being a more happy stepmom. And I like to call those your bathroom floor moments, like the moments that you're, on your bathroom floor and just, feeling terrible, can't get up. So tell me a little bit about that journey and how you were able to, transform your own stepmom life.
Yeah, sure. Bathroom floor moments. Mine was my bathtub. My bathtub was my bathroom floor. After the initial kind of honeymoon wore off and I realized what I actually had gotten myself into, all things considered, our situation was pretty kind of low conflict. It was a pretty good stepfamily situation looking back, and now with all the clients I've had, like I really had nothing to complain about.
It's all relative.
It's all relative. I just had all of these feelings coming up in me that I was like not prepared for. I thought that I would really easily bond with my husband's son because like I love kids. I've always wanted them. Our relationship has taken a very long time to develop to the place that it is now. So I was really struggling with this like shame of like, why am I having trouble bonding with he's 6, he's a baby. Like, what's wrong with me? I had all of this insecurity about his ex-wife, and we fought so much about having our own kids, so I battled with all of the, why was she good enough to have a kid with, but I'm not good enough to have a kid with. He was just trying to keep his ex-wife from changing anything. He was worried about having his time with his son taken away. So anything she wanted, she got. And I think neither of us really knew what we were getting into. Both of us kind of came into it with rose-colored glasses. He had a lot of healing from his divorce that he didn't do until like fairly recently. So the whole dynamic of it was just really, it was a really immature kind of thought process of how we were going to go into it. There was a lot of blame and a lot of shame and a lot of nobody taking responsibility for their stuff. So I, like I said, had a really hard time bonding with my stepson. And so whenever he would come for his weekends or his weeks, I would spend literally every single night that he was there, like in my bathtub, drowning in wine, scouring the forums and scouring the internet, buying all of the books on Amazon, reading all of the blog posts I could find. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I was looking for like maybe some hope or some advice or something that everything was going to be okay. But pretty much everything I came across was basically just like, this is the way life is going to be now, right? Like this is what you signed up for. You married the kids too. All of this really unhelpful advice that was basically like, suck it up, buttercup. Like, what's wrong with you, right? There was nothing really supportive. There was nothing really uplifting. There was nothing really encouraging. And trust me, I spent many an hour in that bathtub at the bottom of a wine bottle looking for the solution, and I never found it. And there came a time, that my husband and I were. The specific fight was that it was summer holidays coming up, and my husband and his ex-wife had renegotiated their custody visitation schedule for the summer, where my stepson was going to be coming for an entire month. And none of this was passed by me. It was just like presented to me like he's going to be here for an entire month. And it was like the last thing that just sent me over the edge. So we had a screaming match. I told him I wanted a divorce. And he looked me dead in the face and he was like, Brittany, you know what? If you want a divorce, fine. But he said, wherever you go, you will be there. Wherever you go, you'll be there. And that moment, like, I was so mad at him But that moment like kind of changed my thought process around a lot of things. And I started thinking about this. We left the fight for a bit, and I started to consider like, what did that really mean? It really rocked me, that sentence. Wherever you go, you'll be there. It really rocked me. And so my journey now of figuring out how to save my marriage and salvage my relationship with my husband that had been so damaged by the way I was trying to hold on to him really became less about my stepfamily and more about me. And so I dove headfirst into, I finally found a therapist that I connected with. I tried going to therapy before, and I just had a really hard time finding a therapist I really clicked with.
Makes all the difference.
Yeah. And I finally found one that I was like, oh, she gets me. It was so validating. I felt so seen and so heard and so understood. And so I started going to therapy really regularly. I started having some trauma therapy, and then I got into the world of personal development, and, mindfulness became a big part of my life at that point, which isn't a surprise that mindfulness is a big part of, my own coaching process now with my own stepmom clients. But yeah, when the journey stopped being about me trying to fix my stepfamily and trying to fix my stepson and trying to save my husband and trying to keep him protected and trying to keep him from feeling sad, and it became more about me being where I was, that's when everything really started to shift. So it was a long way back for sure. It was a long road back for sure, but that was the TSN turning point for me.
I think so many stepmoms feel like it's up to them to make it work. It's up to them to keep the family together. It's up to them to make the kids like them. It's up to them to, fit into the picture with their spouse. And it ends up putting a lot of like a really untenable amount of pressure on stepmoms,
I don't disagree with that whatsoever.
Yeah. It's interesting, so much of what you're talking about with your bathroom floor moment boils down to, and I think a lot of stepmoms feel this way. I know I did. When you get into being a stepmom, you sort of realize that a lot of areas of your life that you used to have control over are now totally out of your control, right? Like your schedules. And, you're talking about, all of a sudden there's a kid coming to stay with us for a month. I didn't ask for that. I didn't even agree to that, step parenting really does require so much more intentionality from the get-go. And I think that's something that a lot of stepmoms get into and don't necessarily realize. And then they blame themselves when it doesn't work. So, you talk about, you were putting all this pressure on yourself. Like, why doesn't this kid like me? Why can't I make him like me? Why can't I make this work? There's so much negative self-talk that results from this sort of lack of control and this, not really understanding how the dynamics, how can you change that? How do you reverse that self-talk?
Honestly, I wish that I could give like a simple answer, but for me anyway, a lot of that self-talk was really rooted in some like inner child, like unresolved childhood trauma and childhood pain. This looping inner critic voice that I have and that so many of my clients have and so many stepmoms have of like, you're not good enough, you're not enough, you're not doing enough, you're not saving enough, it's your fault. This is not a new voice. This is not a new accompaniment to the conversations that go on inside of your mind. And so when I realized, that this self-talk about how I was essentially failing as a stepmom was not a new voice, and that I could find evidence of that voice all the way throughout my whole entire life. Again, it became less about the stepfamily and more about, how can I heal this? Where did this root from? Where did this stem from? And how can I heal that, right? How can I go back to when I'm 4 years old or 5 years old where this self-talk started and work backwards from there?
But that's such good advice, because you really have to, you have to address things with yourself before you can really be there for anyone else, whether it's your employer or your family. And, it's sort of like the flight attendant telling you to put your mask on first before you put it on your children. You've got to take care of what's going on inside before you can be that spouse, be that stepmom, and all that kind of stuff. So how long did it take you to kind of figure things out and get back on track and all of that good stuff?
I don't think the work's ever done. Like, that's a good point. I never thought, 5 years ago, I guess, or 6 years ago when I kind of started off on the journey, if you would have given me a crystal ball and said, this is where you're going to be in 2021, I would have laughed, right? Like I wouldn't have believed it. But we're never done. My husband and I, we still sign up for like Gottman seminars, and we have like really intentional meetings every week where we hash out stuff that's uncomfortable. The only difference is that now we can lean into the uncomfortable stuff. It's not perfect, right? We still fight all the time. There's tears at least once a week on at least one of our parts. I'm still not there with wherever there is with my stepson. I'm not there as a mother. And for me, maybe that's kind of been one of the most liberating parts is being able to give myself the permission to know that it's never done. And therefore I don't have to hold myself to this perfection standard of like, I'm not doing enough, I'm not being enough, I'm not going fast enough, because this is just part of the process, right? You're never there.
It's a huge lesson, right?
It's a huge lesson. It's such a huge lesson being okay with where you are and knowing that there's no such thing as perfect and you're never going to get there. Like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow doesn't exist.
And it's all a journey. It's more about finding the pot of gold than it is the actual pot of gold.
Enjoying the colors and hanging out in the clouds and chasing the leprechaun. Yeah, totally.
Feeling grateful for the storm that produced the rainbow. Absolutely. I don't know. There are probably like a million analogies.
There's so many. We could go on for a long time.
So, I think it's so great to hear that, your husband is working all this through with you, because and I know Craig and I, my husband and I, always come back to the same point when we're fighting. We sort of, one of us will usually kind of, we'll get fed up and we'll be like, wait a minute, we're on the same team. And we kind of come back to that mantra of like, we're in this together, and so usually when we do that, we can trigger each other to like get back on the same page and really work towards a solution. But how do you advise stepmoms when they have a difficult spouse or a partner who isn't necessarily willing to put the work in to be part of the solution? I mean, maybe like the situation that you mentioned, your situation where all of a sudden you were presented with your stepson coming for a month. Like, what if your husband, instead of, wanting to work through everything with you over these past years, what if he was kind of like, well, that's just the way things are?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And, interestingly enough, kind of the method that I've developed that I coach stepmoms through actually requires 0% change from husbands, wives, stepkids, ex-spouses. The results that I help my clients get or support them in figuring out themselves to get is really internally focused, and it's really has nothing to do with anybody else. It's really about learning to be okay exactly in the situation that you're in. And if you're not, then you go, right? But it's about, and some people might be like, whoa. I'm not saying leave your spouse. Disclaimer, I'm not saying leave your spouse, but I'm saying, there's, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but when I took my Stepfamily Counselling certification and I started coaching counseling, I guess, by the book, I realized there was just this really high expectation of other people in the stepfamily having to kind of fit into specific boxes in order to make this stepfamily system work. And that kind of school of thought doesn't work for me, and it wasn't working for my clients, more importantly. And my clients that I was having coaching by the book they weren't getting what they wanted from the work. So when I kind of backed up and I realized, I don't live my life this way. I don't live my life in the way of trying to make my husband change the way that he parents. Mm-hmm. I don't live my life in the way where I'm trying to control anymore. I haven't got these changes in my life because I've been controlling the interactions between my husband and his ex-wife. So what am I doing that's actually opposed to what I learned by the book. And when I started going that way and I started making it more of like an internal journey, that's when my clients started seeing really amazing things happening for them. So I think that there's this misconception that in order to kind of thrive in your role as a stepmom, you've got to get people to like fall in line, and you've got to get people to, you got to teach your spouse how to lay down the law. You've got to teach your spouse how to not let their ex walk all over them. Like we all want, it's so based in like fixing and changing, when really, if you think about how hard it is to change yourself, you can realize it's going to be impossible to change somebody else. So I think you're working from a broken strategy if you just are going into any kind of step family work with the intention of making other people change.
Mm-hmm. That's really good advice and really thoughtful. It does make it difficult if you've got a partner who's kind of dug in and saying like, I'm not gonna work with you here.
I don't disagree. Something, I will say, kind of one of the I guess more tangible pieces of advice that I would offer to a client of mine whose spouse was being super resistant or having a hard time communicating about something would be the reminder, like you said, you and your husband are on the same team, right? Offer this reminder that whatever is happening inside of your stepfamily situation that is creating this conflict is because of the stepfamily situation itself and because of like the communication patterns. It's not your spouse, right? Your spouse isn't your enemy. Your stepkids aren't your enemy. Contrary to popular belief, your spouse's ex is not your enemy. The issue is the stepfamily dynamic itself and the way that we've patterned our communication. So if the way that we're communicating with our spouses isn't being productive, it's not because our spouse is dug in and being a wiener. It's because our communication patterns are not productive. And so when we recognize, we need to shift these communication patterns instead of change our spouse, it becomes a little more depersonalized and a little more productive of a conversation.
Mm-hmm. That's such a good point. So it's more about like finding those channels of communication where you can agree and kind of figuring out what it is that you're each saying and what it is that you each really want.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Now, I know you have got a program you're opening up this month called the Stepmom Story that addresses, I love the description, how to handle it when happily ever after falls apart. Tell me a little bit about this, what you offer, what the program is, and where people can find out more about it.
Yeah. So your Stepmom Story is, in my opinion, one of the best like online stepmom support and transformation communities out there. We essentially offer all of the tools for you to get your happily ever after, to make your happily ever after come true. It is, I could say, like, it makes you want to cry. It makes you want to cry when I think about the transformations that clients who have gone through it have had, because you go in thinking that you're going to get one thing out of it, but the way that it's designed, it's usually quite surprising what comes out. So yes, I'm opening up this month. I've actually got a free workshop series, 3-part workshop series leading up to that. That's happening right away. So that workshop series is called Uplifted Stepmom. It helps you kind of get acquainted with my teaching style and with kind of my school of thought and how I approach stepfamily specific problems. There's somebody for everybody, right? Different people need different coaches. Different people need different strategies. So this 3-part workshop series is really to help you decide, like, am I the right coach to help you? Is the type of community that I attract the right type of community for you? If so, join the Stepmom Story. If not, awesome. I hope you find the coach that works for you. So yeah, head on over to my Instagram at the Stepqueen if you want to figure out how to register for that or join the story.
That's fantastic. And we'll make sure that we've got all your links in our show notes, which will be at thiscustomlife.com/episode 28. Now, the other thing that I'm really excited about is that you are speaking at our Stepmom Summit this month, August 26th to 28th, and we are so excited for this. So you're going to be talking about, I've previewed your presentation, and it's great. So without giving too much away to our listeners, because we want to save all the good stuff for them, tell me a little bit. You're going to be talking about outsider syndrome. So just give us a little bit of a sneak peek about what we're going to learn from you.
Sure.
At the summit.
Outsider syndrome is something that I feel like very, 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 very passionately about. I've yet to meet a stepmom who hasn't felt like at some point she was just like getting stuck onto another person's family and that she didn't quite belong. So specifically what I'm going to be doing or what I am speaking about throughout the summit is to help stepmoms kind of look at a few things. One of the most important things, because this is such a universal experience that so many stepmoms have of outsider syndrome, is that there is actually a very good reason that so many stepmoms do feel like outsiders in their own home. And helping to kind of demystify the specific reason behind why stepmoms feel that way and recognize that it is such a normal experience and why that happens kind of helps to give some permission as to like, okay, this is a normal stepmom experience. There is a solution, right? But there's a very good reason and it has nothing to do with you, stepmom. It has nothing to do with you personally or specifically. Again, has to do with the stepfamily structure. So I help you look at, what does the research say about why that outsider syndrome experience is happening in the first place. And then I help you come up with kind of a really easy, accessible plan to help you transition from feeling like an outsider to becoming an integrated part of your stepfamily, and give you some kind of pointers on how to set that plan in motion so that by the end of the presentation, by the end of the speech, this is exactly what I have to do. This is why I feel like an outsider. And this is exactly what I have to do so that I can feel like an insider in my home and so that I can realize that their family is my family too.
Oh, I love that. You're right. I think that there's no stepmom alive that hasn't, even if they don't feel that way all the time, that they haven't felt like that at least once in their stepmom experience. And that's such an important, I think, and part of our goal with the summit, and I think that, you're talking about this, framing it as, hey, this is normal. All stepmoms experience that. And that's part of our goal with the summit is really to, talk to women about some of these important issues so that they understand that like, it's not your fault. This isn't because you're a crappy stepmom. This is really common, and it's because of the structure of your stepfamily. And here are some solutions, So that is so great.
Totally. Yeah, there's what a great speaker lineup that y'all have got rounded up for the summit. It just looks absolutely amazing. So I'm super excited about it.
Well, we are too. So again, if you guys would like to go and get your free ticket, you can go to thestepmomsummit.com and we'll have links to that and all of Brittany's links in our show notes at thiscustomlife.com/episode 28. So one last really substantive question before we wrap. I always love to ask, what are you binge watching right now?
Okay, I want to preface this with saying this is my first time doing this. Okay, I'm not that type of girl. Okay, that's how I'm going to preface this. I have this like obsession with really dark, really heavy shows like HBO. Give me the darker, the better. But yeah. But right now, I just needed like a break from that, so I started binging The Real Housewives of New Jersey. And
yes. And I'm so happy to hear you say that. Nobody says The Real Housewives, and I love all The Real Housewives. It's the perfect to get your brain off of like whatever's going on in your life.
It really, really, really is. Yes, it's shocking.
And it's a great, for us stepmom coaches, it's a great study in high conflict personalities and all kinds of other dysfunction.
Isn't it? I watched one last night where they were like flipping tables, and I was like, oh.
Yes.
But that's why they're out there, right? It's to be like, I got my life all figured out. Look at these people.
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah. So stepmoms, the lesson here is if you ever feel bad about your life,
watch The Real Housewives.
100%.
100%.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, on that note, Brittany, this was so fun, and I cannot wait to see you in a couple of weeks at the summit. And thank you so much for spending time with us today and in a couple of weeks. This was great.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about the summit, and it's going to be awesome.
That's it for this week. If you've enjoyed our chat, I hope you'll help spread the word. Share this episode with friends and head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave me a review. And don't forget, for more great stepmom content, head on over to thiscustomlife.com and follow me on social media. Just search This Custom Life on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Until next time, you keep being you and know that we are in this together. See you here next week.